Good afternoon, all, and welcome. Today, we are going to tackle a very important issue that no one is tackling that much. It seems to be a simple issue, but actually, it is not. There is no many details about this, which is the factories and the environmental compliance, especially the small factories. We have to say that the small factories, they have to, the question is how they are going to do this and the costs. It's very costly actually, and how to deal with this. And are we able to help this in Egypt or not? So this is the idea of our subject today. This is the idea of our session. So what happened actually? I was in India in the T20, and I met Mohua Mukherjee. I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Okay. And we became friends very quickly. Okay. And I saw her on the panel talking, and she was talking about the environmental compliance, okay, of the small factories. And she said that in India they had a system and they had many ways of trying to help the small enterprises manage. It was a short intervention, but when she finished, okay, I talked to her and I told her, listen, your experience is very useful for Egypt, so let's talk about it in Egypt. في الاجتماعات بتاعة الجي 20.
In the meeting in the G20 in India, there was a meeting of the T20. You know that the G20, we have some letters, the T20, so the teen tax, the B20 is the business 20, W20, and so anything, and then 20. The most important thing that during the T20 we tackled this subject, and you tackled the issue in a very good way, and this has give us the idea to see what is the Indian experience and to benefit from this experience. In order to benefit from the Indian experience, we have to understand the Egyptian experience. So it is very important for us to have with us Engineer Ahmed Kamal Abdel Menaim, the executive manager in the Industrial Federation, and he's an expert in the sustainable development and the society responsibility, and he has an experience many years in the technical field in many industrial variable sectors, in addition to his experience in the better clean products and managing the wastes. So he has such an experience. He is the focal point of many of the international organizations. He is a member of the committee of the carbon footprint in the Middle East and North Africa, and lots of other titles, but the most important title is that he is the executive the executive manager of the environmental compliance office since 2008. So, okay. Always when we have a speaker, we are going to challenge him. Who is going to challenge him today is Mr. Amr Matar, CEO of Sawa Factory and the CEO of the Association of the Developing and Developing of the Investors of the SMEs. And he is also has a vast experience. We have also a very engineer Karim Sabba, Reliance Group, in Reliance company, and he participated in establishing the platform of and he got his master's from the AUC in Egypt. Let me tell you that when we were inside we found that Mr. Amr, he doesn't know the engineer, and the engineer doesn't know Amr, so they just met now. Do you know him? If you know him, it's okay. Oh, he doesn't know you. Anyway, not even Dr. Hisham. In the industrial zone, we have thousands of factories. I'm just mentioning facts, not more than this. Very naively.
طيب او يعني مقصود من غير والله عشان بس يعني let me in my turn introduce Mohua. She's a senior research fellow. She has worked for over 25 years in various team leadership positions at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. Her policy and investment experience covers 9 sectors and 44 countries. So we actually have a world authority here. Currently, Mohua is a senior research fellow at the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies. In the first part of her career, while on a sabbatical leave from the World Bank, Mohua lived in Nairobi, Kenya at the end of 1990s for 3 years. During her stay in Nairobi, Mohua worked at Citibank and ABN AMRO Bank as head of corporate finance. Apart from energy research work at present, Mohua currently serves as director on the board of an Indian green housing finance company. She is also the chairperson of the board for another Indian impact investment company, which is 100% owned by Oikocredit of the Netherlands. She has bachelor's and master's degree in economics and an MBA, all from Boston University, and certificate in public-private partnerships from Harvard University. It's a pleasure to have you, and a very, very long experience, and a very nice person also. I'll start with you. I'll give you the floor for 20 minutes. Okay, so please, we want to hear about the Indian experience and very specifically about how, exactly the title of your presentation, how can the small enterprises manage the environmental compliance? We want to be as specific as possible with clear solutions, because these are the lessons that we intend to draw. Thank you. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, distinguished audience members. First, let me thank Dr. Abla and Egyptian Center for Economic Studies for this very kind invitation. It's my pleasure to talk about this. I have prepared 7 slides for you, so hopefully we can focus on the solutions, the very specific solutions that Abla asked for. Let me just begin by introducing, before I come to my first slide, that fortunately for small enterprises, the what of how they can manage environmental compliance, meaning how they reduce their use of coal, diesel, electricity, or gas, the technologies are already there. The technologies are mature. They can use rooftop solar, they can use electric 3-wheeled vehicle, they can use solar water heaters. Those technologies are there. The key challenge is how can they access them with finance? So here, I just wanted to point out that we have rooftop solar, which is actually on the roof, and we also can do a pole-mounted solar panels for small enterprises who do not have a strong enough roof or do not have enough space on the roof. So I will be talking mainly about rooftop solar, but I just want you to be aware that this applies to various other clean technologies that will save money for the small enterprise and will also help the environment and improve their sustainability. So let me come in here. The problem to be addressed, this is the type of company that we are talking about. This is the type of small enterprise that produces between 30 and 40% of GDP in many developing countries, and they offer employment to a very large portion of the informal workforce. So the problem, as I see it, has 2 parts. There's a demand side, which is that the small enterprise has a lack of awareness of what are the benefits for rooftop solar if they were to invest in rooftop solar and how they could get potential savings. And then there is also the issue that they see environmental compliance is not related to their core business activity as far as they understand. So one part of the problem is the demand side. The other side is the supply side. If the small enterprise wants to access a clean technology, then it needs to have a loan because these technologies are still too costly, too expensive for a small enterprise to immediately purchase upfront with the full payment. So they need a loan. But the problem is that the lender is unwilling to take the credit risk of the small enterprise. The lender actually prefers a different type of borrower. The lender does not want the SME. The lender prefers a bigger borrower who should then deal with the SME, with the small medium enterprise. So moving on, let's have a quick review of 3 key concepts, and then we will get to the solutions very soon in this presentation. The first concept I wanted to revisit is a rooftop solar is a so-called pure hardware play, in the sense that the fuel is free. The fuel is the sunlight. So there is no ongoing variable cost. You just have to afford to buy the rooftop solar system. System consists of the panels, the frame on which the panel sits, or the pole. There is something called the inverter, because when the sunlight hits the solar panel, the electricity which is produced is called direct current, DC, whereas all your appliances and the SME's machinery requires AC, alternating current. So one of the key pieces is this little machine called an inverter. Then there are some cables. Then there is something called a junction box, where the rooftop solar connects to the electricity grid connection in your house or in your building. So essentially, the thing to remember is that what you need to buy is only a bunch of hardware. There is no fuel cost, unlike with your diesel generator. So the financing cost, how much do you have to repay for your loan every month to buy this piece of hardware, is the main determinant that will make it attractive or not. And why is that so? That is so because today the SME pays a certain amount every month for their electricity bill. Let us suppose they pay $500. Now, if they reduce their purchase from the electric company because they are making their own solar on their rooftop, let us suppose they can avoid the buying of $200 worth of the original bill of 500. So 200 worth of electricity they're making on their roof. So they only pay 300 to the electric company. Now they took a loan to buy this hardware system. If they have to pay more than $200 on the loan for to do the debt service, then it will not make sense to them, because then their total cost of electricity will go above the 500 which they pay today. So I just want to emphasize this cost of the debt service. How to lower the cost of finance is one of the key challenges that we have seen in India and that I will talk about in this presentation. But I wanted you to understand why it's so important, because if they are paying too much to the bank every month and they're still buying at night from the electric company, if their total expenditure goes higher than what it is today, then they will not do it. They will never do it. So the key thing is for clean technologies is how to give them a lower financing cost. Next thing, so case A versus case B, what I wanted to say is in one case, if the SME goes to a bank, he is told you can get a 3-year loan and you have to pay a 15% interest rate. So you have to pay this $1,000 rooftop system back to me in 3 years. And each time you pay a 15% interest rate, the numbers will not work. He will say, no, thank you. I will stick with my diesel generator. Now, case B is where a better type of borrower, somebody whom I will call an aggregator later in this presentation. An aggregator is a large company that is a solar rooftop specialist that has aggregated or combined the demands of, let's say, 100 SMEs. And he comes to the bank and he says, I'm an aggregator. I want a loan of $10 million to buy this 100 rooftop systems. And I will put them on the roofs of all these SMEs, and you give me the loan, give it to me, the aggregator. That is what I'm calling case B. Not surprisingly, the bank may be much more comfortable with the aggregator. It's a single loan. There's much less transaction costs. So the bank might tell him, okay, I'll give you a 10-year loan and your interest rate can be 8%. So remember, they told the SME, I'll give you a 3-year loan and your interest rate will be 15%. But to the aggregator, they quoted a much better rate. So in India, what we find is that you have to locate these intermediaries, like the aggregator. We'll talk about it a bit more. So this is the third party. So the third party is that is the aggregator, is a renewable energy service company called RESCO for short. And the RESCO basically is the owner of the rooftop systems. He puts it on the roof of 100 different companies and he becomes their rooftop seller. He is the owner of the asset. He's sitting on the roof and whatever is being generated on the roof, the solar energy, he is measuring that with a meter and he is charging the customer under the roof only to pay him for the solar energy units, just like the electric company does. They give you a bill, they say you consumed this many units, this is how much you have to pay me. So the RESCO is similar, but he is selling solar units. The good thing with the third-party model is that the SME doesn't have to buy any of the equipment and doesn't have to take a loan. So we will get back to that. So I want to introduce two more terms. We already talked about aggregation. That is when you combine the demand of many, many SMEs. Now I want to talk about the CapEx versus OpEx. So CapEx model is the rare case where the SME buys the entire rooftop system and becomes the owner from day one. So they get a loan, they pay the vendor, they buy the system, and they are the owner from day one. So they only have to repay their loan to the bank. But that is very rare for the reasons we discussed. And the OpEx model is the operational expenses. The first one is the capital expenses, CapEx, and this one is OpEx, operational expense. That is where your solar energy becomes an operational expense only, meaning that you pay for what you use. But somebody else is the owner of the equipment and they are selling it to you. So you can have a one-by-one OpEx model, or you can have an aggregated OpEx model. If you have an aggregated OpEx model, it's more efficient because it means that 100 SMEs are able to benefit from the OpEx model at the same time. The RESCO is doing this service for many small, medium enterprises at the same time. So the challenge, one challenge we already mentioned is how to lower the financing cost. Another challenge is how to get the RESCO interested in doing this for the small enterprise, because they are already doing it in India for the large high-end enterprise, it's become a very great thing. We have almost 11 gigawatts of rooftop solar installed, but mainly for large industries and large companies. How to get the third-party investor interested in the small is the key challenge. So let's look at the barriers. The barriers are that we have to raise awareness through evidence creation. I believe that there needs to be a large demonstration pilot in every country, which, for example, says that we will support, including with some sovereign funding from a multilateral bank or somewhere, we will support, let's say, 500 megawatts of rooftop through providing all the support. Then the support will be removed after the first 500 megawatts are in, because this is a learning process. And it's for public learning, and it's creating a value proposition. So you demonstrate, and you need good interested investors for this. You need a green credit facility. We can talk about that later. You have to have domestic also green investors. They are the ones who have to show that they are supporting some kind of lowering of a carbon footprint. And you can issue green bonds. I know that Egypt has already issued a sovereign green bond, but not for rooftop. But anyway, these are the sources of money that you have to go after. How to address these barriers? First, let us say that when you are proposing that I'm going to remove the barriers for small, medium enterprise, the first thing to remember is a lot of them are not energy efficient today. They're using much more energy than they need to. So they would have to oversize. If they have to buy the rooftop system for their current energy use, that one would be too big. It's like if you have a family of 4, but you are buying a car which can seat 8 passengers, you're spending too much. You first have to become efficient. You have to know, how can I use the correct amount of energy? And then how can I buy a rooftop system which corresponds to that amount of energy? The market, for lack of awareness, the market should have some equipment standards. So you are only buying good quality products. The SME doesn't know what type of contract it should enter with the rooftop seller. So we say that the Ministry of Energy or Ministry of Environment, whoever is in charge of this environmental compliance, should create sample contracts and put it on their website. So make it very easy for everybody to see and understand what this should look like. In other words, you take out the mystery and you make it accessible. That's one way to remove the barriers. Then you have a very important to involve your electricity distribution company, because your rooftop system, the small enterprise rooftop system, ultimately is going to connect to the network, which is owned and operated by the electricity distribution company. So they should be involved in designing this pilot project. Remember, I had said the government should do a pilot project for first 500 megawatts of rooftop solar or any other clean technology. They should involve everybody, the stakeholders. The electricity distribution company is very important. RESCOs will be comfortable to come in if the government is leading a program, and also the lenders will be comfortable to come in. And we can talk about how to reduce the costs of this program by proper intelligent sharing of information. But these are all actions needed to lower the barriers that will bring everybody in to the picture. This one, we assume that CapEx model will not suit most SMEs. They are not capable of buying the thing and owning it from day one with a loan. What we call the portfolio approach is the one I was talking about, when one RESCO or third-party investor aggregates, let's say, 100 SMEs. Why is this good? Because you are aggregating different type of risk. You know, for example, that 5% will default, but you know that not all 5% will default on the same day. So it's much less risky to have 100 SMEs who are paying you, the RESCO, and with their payment, which you receive from your SME, you use that payment to repay your loan. So the RESCO is the one who takes the loan from the bank. The RESCO sells solar electricity to his 100 customers in his portfolio. And with the money he receives from them, he uses it to repay his bank loan. The bank is comfortable with the RESCO as the borrower because the bank knows that if a small enterprise is having difficulty, or maybe their rooftop system stopped working or something like that, the RESCO can much better deal with the SME than the bank can deal with. So the bank says to the RESCO, you go and get your money from these small, medium enterprises, and you just repay me every month whatever interest rate and debt service we agreed on. So there is something called a power purchase agreement with the SME. So the RESCO has to feel comfortable enough to sign 100 different power purchase agreements with 100 different SMEs. They have taken a loan for $10 million, put up all these 100 different systems. Now they have to collect the monthly money under the power purchase agreement arrangement. And this is important. Various credit enhancements will be required. That's why we say that the government should be leading, or the public sector should be leading the first 500 megawatt. The market knows that those of you who want to be first movers, you will get a lot of credit support and risk mitigation in this first 500 megawatt. After that, we stop and the market has to function on its own. So this will give you a lot of information. If I have time, I just want to quickly mention, I'll just run through this quickly. Within OPEX, within the arrangement where there's the RESCO is the owner of the equipment and the borrower to the bank, and putting it on 100 different roofs of SMEs which have a varying level of credit risk. There are 4 different main models we see in India. One is the BOOM, which means build, own, operate, maintain. That means for 25 years. This power purchase agreement lasts for 25 years, and the ownership never transfers to the SME. The ownership always remains with the RESCO, and the power purchase agreement always remains. The next one is the build, own, operate, transfer. This is a power purchase agreement for only 10 years, for example. Can be 8 years, 12 years, but it's a limited time because the equipment life is 25 years. But this BOOT, build, own, operate, transfer, is a shorter repayment period where the RESCO has taken a shorter loan from the bank, maybe only 10 years. So after 10 years, after year 10, the power purchase agreement stops, and the life remaining on the equipment is another 15 years. But for that time, the ownership is transferred. That's this T. The SME becomes the owner. They have finished paying for it, and now they're the owner. They don't have to pay anything anymore. And they continue to enjoy the solar on their rooftop. The next one is a lease. If you notice, under BOOM and BOOT, you are paying for exactly the energy you use, and it's metered. But in the lease, it's a flat payment. So regardless of how much you use or how much is generated, you just pay the same amount of money every month to the lease, to the property owner, to the rooftop solar system owner. So this is a flat payment if the SME wants to have confidence about how much it will spend on energy every month. And the last business model which we have in India right now working is the rooftop rental. This is a very interesting one. The person who is hosting the equipment does not consume any of the energy. that is generated on his roof. He just rents his space. Suppose you have a warehouse with a huge roof that gets a lot of sunshine and you're not doing anything. There's no consumption. You only have a few light bulbs inside that warehouse. So no load, no consumption inside the warehouse. You can rent your roof space to either a RESCO or even to the electric distribution company by the square meter. They pay you some amount and they put their panels and they put their panel electricity, whatever is generated, straight into the electric grid. So these are the 4 business models. I will finish. This is my last slide. We noticed in India that there's a very high cost of obtaining data. RESCO usually charges too much because they have a nightmare of trying to understand who are these SMEs, how can I find a good one, how much should I pay for my loan, what can they afford, etc. So the reason we suggest the public sector-led initial 500 megawatt or 1 gigawatt initiative is to get all this data, just to do a demonstration pilot. So local authorities can create a data room. This was very successful in one state in India. And then the local authorities can also conduct a tender among qualified RESCOs. That's very good for price discovery. When the RESCO has to compete with other RESCOs to give the best price, if he wants to win the contract to get these 100 rooftops of the SMEs. Public finance or climate finance is needed for de-risking all the contracts. Now, what we hear always is, oh, the climate finance is not coming. Actually, it's coming if you present them with a very good and well-prepared project. You will find investors if you have all the information gathered and you create a shovel-ready project, something that is ready to go. Public finance and climate finance will come. You need to offer a payment security mechanism for the first demonstration pilot of 500 megawatt or 1 gigawatt. Payment security mechanism means the lender says, what happens if 1 month there is no, my borrower is unable to pay the installment. So payment security mechanism simply means that you have some money corresponding to 1 month or 3 months of interest payment sitting somewhere in an escrow account. So if there is an interruption in payment, they can immediately get their money. They need that in order to be agreeable to this kind of thing. A credit guarantee mechanism is a different thing. That is, payment security was in case of late payment. Credit guarantee mechanism is in case of default. So usually you can use climate finance to say that, okay, I think 5% of my borrowers might default at some point because their SME may go out of business. So 5% may default. Please give me a coverage for a 10% default. That means that in case I cannot collect from 10% of my borrowers, so you are over-insuring yourself by double. But you can find climate finance because the problem is that 5% will fail, but you don't know who are the 5% who will fail. So you don't give anybody. So the point of this payment security and credit guarantee is to assure the lender and give comfort to the lender that no matter who is the 5% or 10%, we will give you coverage so that you do not suffer. And we also can give only this small money, but you can mobilize and lend to the rest of the 100. Pooling risks through aggregation. We already talked about that. You will have different risk among the SMEs. It's a low-cost way to, it's much easier than doing one by one. So aggregation, very important. Capacity building is needed for all parties. And this is my very last bullet point. There's a huge role for local think tanks in any country, a consortium of different think tanks with different expertise to actually create this pilot project and to set it up and to talk to everybody and to get all the information, put the project together, and then approach the climate financier and say, here it is, I'm missing this much money just in order to be able to do this. And this is very important, evidence of benefits, so that you can tell them with their money, what benefits will they be sponsoring? You have to quantify all that. So there's a huge amount of upfront work to be done in order to get SMEs into this. I'll stop here. I think I'm over my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahua. This was beyond excellent, I have to tell you. Really, thank you so much. Very precise, very clear way of doing things, complete solutions. And I'll shift to Arabic and the translator can help. يعني في المعتاد انا ما بروحش نطق.
Norm, that was actually awesome. You're very precise, very, very precise. And you gave us a complete recipe. It means that the SMEs cannot take the risk by himself. So I have here, we have to get the support of the government, of the public sector. We have to gather the information, the data. She mentioned the steps in a very clear way. And I think this is very useful for Egypt. For example, if we need to do something serious